Why do you think that when I put this hat on, or if I wear a shirt with this bird logo on it, that a certain group of audience will automatically know what it is and is drawn to it? And the reason for that is because they've built a world behind it. Now, if you're building a brand, posting content, or marketing for anything, and you don't have a mood board or a vision board that you're referring to, you're just guessing. When I was a lead designer making ads and we brought in 8 figures that year, it wasn't because I was just guessing. It was because we had a fully crafted vision board on how our whole brand should look. In this video, I'm going to show you the tools that I use for mood boarding, sometimes called vision boarding. And it starts with creating a mood board that communicates what your vision is. So if you want to build something people are obsessed about, let's get started. I've been using Pinterest for years, and it has the most vibes. If you want to do anything vibey, Pinterest has it. For example, if you want text and typography, just click on something and then you would just have a ton of different recommendations. Now, of course, this is catered towards my feed since I've been building this Pinterest feed for years now, maybe even a decade. But if you were just to type anything out, for example, if you want Aimee Leon Dore typography, you would have something that looks pretty much similar to it. And then from there, what I like to do and how I dig deeper with the platform is I would find something that I like. Now, for example, if I like this style right here, this ad, it has this 1980s type of ad. If you click on it, it'll give you a bunch of other recommendations. And this is where the beauty of Pinterest comes in, is that the recommendation system is so good. If you like this one, for example, you get all of these. And then as we're looking through all of these, maybe there's something else that is kind of similar, but not exactly like it. Like this one, courtside. This one is also very beautifully done, in my opinion. It shows how you can use small elements like this, like iconography, and how they did the typography here to all fit really nicely together. And this is, in a way, similar to the style of the last one that we just looked out at. And it was completely different. If you want to do design like that, you would save these two, and then it would be in a matching template or vision board, mood board. And so from here, if you go down, you could even go into more and more deeper rabbit holes. Of course, it's not always going to be perfect. Like some of these, they are beautiful, but it doesn't match the vibe exactly. But for example, this one does. And this one is something called Rue. I'm not sure what this is, but the vibe on Pinterest is absolutely top notch. And if you're just looking around and it doesn't seem like it's getting to what you want, the key word on here is aesthetics. So you want to type in something like Bali design aesthetics, for example. So you'd have text for posters if you're doing poster designs. And if you're trying to do some interior design stuff, you would have this type of stuff for interior design. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the vibes are spot on. So from this, it leads you to stuff like this. This is probably in Italy or something like that, some Mediterranean place. And then you could start building a mood board, vision board from there. And so Pinterest is a platform that I recommend to get started on if you want to build an aesthetic. And then from there, there's also another one called Cosmos that I really like. I feel like Cosmos itself is an aesthetic just because the way that the platform is built, it looks so well done. And I think it's a newer company. So for example, with Cosmos, you could do what Pinterest does, but there's also that added benefit of being able to search by color. So for example, this is what I have here. This is a board that I was saving on what type of design and poster design work that I want to do, maybe for a certain feed. And then from here, if I like something like this, or just something on this feed, for example, let's do this. I'll copy this design, and then I can go and search. And so when I search by that design, it gives me the option of going to color. So with color, if I wanted to get a certain colorway, I can search by color, and then it would give me something similar in that vibe with these colors. So here, there's some designs, and I've come to think that this is called a modern, mid-century modern. It's like a revolution of the old Bauhaus stuff that's coming back. So it's starting to just blow up all over my Pinterest and all over my social feeds. And so if you want to get ahead of that, a good way to do that is to think about like, hey, what are some of these classic designs that people are doing, and what are some of these elements that are still applicable today, and then apply it in a color scheme that is very much friendly with today's aesthetics. So you take some old inspiration find something that connects with a color scheme that works now, and then see what inspiration is out there. And then from there, you could save it onto your boards. And I'll also show you what I'm doing with Instagram and TikTok as well, because these are some of the most popular platforms, but there are ways to be more intentional about how you save your stuff and how you mood board what you do with what you see instead of just doom scrolling. So for here on Instagram, I have a lot of different boards. For example, motorcycle shots, I have surf stuff here, I have film story ads. These are all boards that I have, or they call it collections here. And these collections are what I can use as inspiration for when I ultimately bring it to the next step, which I will show you is how I put everything together so that I can look at it all in one place. But we'll get to that in a second. So as I'm consuming Instagram, I try to save everything into a board that fits. For example, like here is where I was trying to design a surfboard. I was looking at different color schemes. Eventually, I settled on a red and a dark brown color scheme. But there is just so much content on Instagram. Sometimes the hardest part is just digging through what's good and separating it instead of falling for the doom scrolling trap, because it's so good at hooking you into the shorts. Now, that's also the same case with TikTok. TikTok also has an amazing Instagram-like algorithm. This algorithm gets you to some of the most catered stuff. So for example, I was looking at aesthetics, and you can start seeing like how things like this popped up. I had just saved it. This is like a dream place that I want to visit. And then going down, there's also other things that are popping up, like people talking about brands. I'm starting to look into brands and how people are sharing about different brands and research that they're doing as a creative director or an art direction. So that's starting to pop up, and I'm saving all of these into little pages, which they call collections on TikTok. And then ultimately, the goal of all this is so that I have a vision board that I can refer to. And this is where I would take all of it. A lot of people have different platforms that they prefer. I prefer Canva because it's so quick for everything. And my feature here that I'm going to show you is called the whiteboard feature. And on the whiteboard feature, you have this massive space to just create anything you want. So it's just gigantic, and you can just have text here, for example. I'll just show you how big it can get. It just gets really big. And so with this, you could put everything in there. Now I'm going to show you, I'm building out a mood board for just types of clothes that I want to do and things that I'm going to eventually get embroidered or hats made of. So as you can see, I have a ton of hat inspiration, but I like to see everything on here all at once, because if it's just like in separate albums, you can't really feel the entire vibe of it. So with this, everything being here all at once, I can see that, okay, maybe these hats right here is a fitting piece for one of these clothing pieces that I'm also going to make. And maybe this hat might be too loud, so the clothing piece should be something minimal, at least minimally labeled or minimally embroidered. So you can feel the whole feel of everything. And then I also have things like the vibes, visuals, and graphics. Like these were just some that I recently liked. And then essentially, you can just build out something that you can look at right next to each other. And I prefer to do it like that because you can see how it all connects. Now, some people might use Figma. Some people can do it on Illustrator. It all comes down to your platform of choice. I like Canva because it's on the web browser. It's quick, and I could just have all the tools that I need for the most part to just brainstorm and draft on here. If I need to do more advanced stuff, I'll take it to other tools and platforms. So once we have all of this gathered, how do we actually bring this into making it as a mood board? There are a couple things to notice. And to keep it easy, I'll break it down into the colors that they use, the way that they use their typography, which is what fonts they have, and the visual elements that they have. And as you think about these three things, it'll essentially give you the vibe of a brand. So like first things first, we're going to talk about color. If you look at all of these, it kind of has a similar color palette. Like if these hats were worn with these clothes, it fits. And so because I put it in this board like this, I can actually see the connection between the two. And so I'm like, okay, I like these colors. And if I like these colors, how can we borrow some of these colors and pull inspiration from these colors and eventually make a color palette guide for the mood board that we're building? So for that, I have a tool. I have a plugin that lets me pick a color, and essentially it just has a dropper tool. I could drag it around and pick a certain color. Like if I like this blue here, I'll pick that blue, and then it'll give me the number for it here. But we already had blue, so I'll move over and I'll pick something else. Say, for example, this monocle hat is really cool. I like the red on it. I use this, and then I'll pick the color of the monocle red. Now, of course, it's not going to be exactly 100% perfect because this is a photo. If you're doing it towards a design, that would be a lot better. Like, it's optimal to do that. So I can show you that example as well. Like if we were looking at some of the graphics that Brigade did here, I could go and use this dropper tool, and then I'll see the gold that they have. Then I could be like, okay, this is the gold that we use because it's the same vibe as this whole color palette that fits with the clothes right here. And it's using this gold very well. And so from there, you build out your color palette for the mood board that you're building. Now, just to recap really quick, there's two things to think about. The overall color palette, which is like the color scheme here, where you can see it's kind of filmic or like old school kind of film. That's the vibe of it. And then there's also the types of colors that would go good with that vibe. And then finally, the types of colors that would work with fonts. So for example, here there's white, there's gold. Sometimes there is like a blue or orange or red that I save a lot. Now, the next thing to notice is the typography, the way that they do their typography. For example, here with Brigade, they have a script font with the sans serif. Now, this is 23, so it is a bit old now. But if you still like the vibe, that's fine. You can still borrow that inspiration. Here's another brand that is popping off called Vacation. Now, this one does say April 21, but the vibe is actually still very similar. So they still use this similar type of font, which is like this 80s nostalgic kind of feel. And then you can go and look at the font and see if this font fits with the mood board that you're creating. Now, if this does fit with the mood board you're creating, there's a way for you to check what this font is. And for that, I like to go to my fonts. It's just super easy. You can just go take a screenshot of whatever you want to identify the font of and then drag it in. And then from there, it lets you choose which colors or which fonts that you want. Go onto the font, identify font, and you will get a list of fonts that are similar to that, whether it's free or whether it costs money to get. And then another trick on that too is if you liked some of these fonts, maybe you could look it up on Google Fonts or Adobe Library. Maybe if you have an Adobe subscription that comes with your subscription. Now, the last thing to notice is the design elements that are used. So for example, we can go and look at the hats. The hat collection that I have here has a lot of similar design elements that go in this old money, rich, like upscale scheme. And you can see that there's a lot of motifs that are used similarly, which is leaf thing here. That's kind of like a Roman crown. And then there's words in between. And then there's a lot of usage of script fonts. There's also certain shapes that we could take a note of. And then here, for example, you'll see that same element of like that Roman crown leaf. You can start to see trends within the brands that you like. So these are all different brands and they have these similar design motifs. For example, I'll go back to my Cosmos board here, which is of design. And these are very similar designs, even though they're from different designers, different pages, different brands. They all kind of fit this similar vibe that is a modern rendition of Bauhaus inspired mid-century modern. And so you can see from here, like these all fit together. And that's why I have it in my Cosmos, because I was like, okay, this is some good inspiration to pull from because I can have some of these similarly shaped designs. And quickly on that, things to notice is how the text is laid out. Maybe it's centered here. The way I like to think about it is if I had this all in a grid and where different spots of the text are, where certain elements are at, or how that affects the rest of the graphic. And this actually does take some experience, so you'll have to practice, make some test designs, move things around, and eventually you'll find your vibe. By doing that, and by first starting with the mood board and putting everything together here, you can get an overall feel for what to do as you're creating your mood board. In a follow-up video, I want to talk about how these brands that were mentioned do their mood boarding. We'll break down every single part of it. We'll really dive into the thinking behind what goes where and why they chose that, the colors, the aesthetics, the look, and all that. So if you're interested, subscribe for that. Leave a comment, like. I'll see you in the next video.